Startups struggle even after IPO. All of us know what happened to Twitter.
Because a lot of people do ask me that, hey, what kind of work-life balance have you seen in working with startups?
What's the meaningful part of joining an early stage company?
It's very hard. Like if that's one thing you're primarily looking for, or if that's something you want to optimize for, then I would not recommend anybody to join an early stage startup.
I have a few friends who actually moved to corporates. They got paid more. They had a much better work-life balance. They could travel the world. All those things were there, but they came back to startups.
Joining an early stage startup, working with the founders, working with how they are trying to solve some of the problem statements, trying to solve the problems with them, that kind of exposure is invaluable.
Hey everyone, I am Navneet, co-founder of Airtribe. Welcome to the Airtribe podcast, where we delve into the world of startups, building products, and the inspiring journeys of leaders working on those products. In today's episode, my co-founder Dhaval and I will be taking a closer look at the intricacies of joining an early stage startup. We will discuss what you can expect, the pros, the cons, and a lot more. I hope you enjoy it and learn something new.
So Navneet, what are we discussing today?
Today we are going to talk about early stage companies, what it means to work at early stage startups, how it feels like, pros and cons, things I think both of us are having a lot of experience in. So yeah, that's all we are going to talk about today.
Interesting. Before we dive deeper into it, let's define what is early stage startup, because you may have a different definition, I might have a different definition.
In my view, early stage is the stage of a startup when they are still trying to figure out the core product, find the core business model. Maybe the team is just founders and a few early engineers, early designers, and people in marketing and growth. But early stage is very chaotic, full of uncertainties. And I think, in my view, the moment a company figures out their core product market fit and a repeatable business model, it starts moving away from that phase of early stage.
Okay, from early stage startup to it becomes a startup?
No, I would say let's talk in terms of funding stages. Early stage companies generally tend to be seed stage, pre-seed stage companies. Companies, when they raise a Series A, Series B round of funding, they start moving to something called growth stage. And when a company keeps growing and scaling their business, after Series D, Series E, you would say something around 5 years, 6 years timeline, they start becoming more of a scaled up startup. So there are 3 stages of a startup in my view: early stage, growth stage, and scale up stage.
Okay, got it. But I think we just disappointed everybody who doesn't believe in VCs funding and they believe in bootstrapped setup.
I think it's just easier for people to understand in terms of funding rounds, but you could also talk in terms of revenue stages of a company. And I think less than 1 million is usually close to an early stage, but 1 million to 10 million is when people say a company is in the growth stage. I think beyond 10 million annual run rate, companies start moving to scaled up stage. So there are different ways of looking at it. Even what I just said, it applies more to companies which are revenue generating from the beginning. It may not be applicable in case of consumer companies, where they care more about user growth than revenue growth in the early years, because monetization happens at scale.
Yeah.
So Dhaval, unlike me, who has been mostly an entrepreneur, I think you have had more of a traditional journey where you started as an engineer, became an executive, then you became a founder. So what's your view on what early stage means to you?
A very simpler definition comes in terms of number of employees we have in a team. Maybe in the range of, let's say, 20, 25-ish is what I would still consider that as an early stage team. And you obviously talked about revenue numbers, so that's another metric to look at. But yeah, I mean, somewhere in this range, I would call it an early stage team where it's a very, very small, close-knit, tight team. And then as and when things grow beyond 25-ish, or let's say you start reaching the numbers of 40, 50 and so on. I think at that stage, you need a lot of processes in place. You need HR team, you need somebody to take care of like a lot of things which were autonomous, I think you need a lot more processes around that. And at that point, I would definitely not call it an early stage startup anymore.
I understand where you are coming from, but I think it's very important to have, 2-3 parameters in place when you look at a company and, when you have to define the stage. Because what you just said, if you only look at the number of employees in a company, the issue is sometimes companies, grow in size to 50, 100 without any PMF.
Yeah.
And they might call themselves not an early stage company, but actually it does disservice to the team itself, to the mission itself, because they are probably not getting close to the goals and thinking of themselves as a growth stage company because of the team size. Yeah. So one thing I have experienced in my career, a team size is not always a very useful metric to optimize for when you scale a business. So you mentioned a revenue metric. So I think team size, a revenue metric, repeatability of the model, all these things have to be looked at together.
Yep.
That's very important.
That's true. Yeah.
Maybe the simplest way of defining early stage would be a company which doesn't know that
struggling.
it...
Which is struggling.
Yeah. I think startups struggle till the very end. Startups struggle even after IPO. All of us know what happened to Twitter and what's happening to Twitter right now. Yeah. So there is no end to the struggle as long as you are alive as a company. But what I was trying to say, one other way of looking at early stage companies would be a company that doesn't really know what it is doing, and it's just trying to figure out what it should actually do. That is also, an easy way of defining the stage, because even if you look at Airtribe, we have gone through a couple of pivots ourselves. Yeah. Even though the core vision remains mostly the same, we have been trying to find the right way of building the product, the right way of building the business. So we are a very good example of early stage. This is
Absolutely.
how it feels like.
Yeah. So if somebody is looking to join such startup, an early stage startup as we defined earlier, what do you think they should keep in mind?
A few things come to my mind. One would be, every early stage company is a fast-paced environment, because like I said, an early stage company is always trying to, find the right product, the right business model. They tend to be very fast-paced, and there is always this sense of urgency. They are always in a race against time. Yeah. Whether the company is first to the market for a product, or they are second to the market or third to the market, the only thing that eventually matters is what percent of the market they are able to capture. Yeah. That defines eventual success for a company. So I think being fast-paced is one of the key attributes. Second would be limited resources, and you could say the first and the second are actually in tension with each other. Yeah. On one side, they want to be fast-paced. On the other side, they also have very limited resources. When I say limited resources, I mean every such company has limited capital and limited staff, and they still have to execute fast enough to remain relevant in a competitive market. And the team is expected to be very creative. Yes. So one of the things I feel founders prioritize, including how we hire at Airtribe, we look for people who can find creative solutions to the problems. They cannot ask for months to build a prototype and validate our hypothesis. They will have to figure things out in a matter of days, in a matter of weeks, and for that they have to be creative. They need to be frugal. They need to find simpler ways of testing a core hypothesis and move on to the next problems.
Time becomes a crucial currency here, right?
Very, very.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons that when people hire, they look for candidates who understand the value of time, who have shown a trait of urgency, showing a sense of urgency in their previous endeavors. So that's very important. Third thing that comes to my mind would be ambiguity and uncertainty that comes with startups. So I think we go through this experience every week.
Day in, day out.
Day in, day out. When we are hiring people, we are looking for candidates who are comfortable with ambiguity, who are comfortable with uncertainty that comes with every startup. And what I mean by that, no matter how confident we are about a particular product or the market, things could change anytime.
Yep.
Sometimes things are in your control, like internal factors. Maybe there is a co-founder conflict. Maybe a key engineer resigned, and maybe the product, just didn't work out for your key customers, and there is a huge social media uproar. All those possibilities exist, or there are external events like some regulation changes, like you are running a fintech company, let's say something like Slice, and RBI comes up with a regulation that kind of penalizes the business model you have. Those things are not completely in your control. So there is inherent uncertainty associated with every early stage company. And I think not just the founders, every single member of the team needs to account for that.
Yep.
These are the three things I could think of right away. I would want to ask, in your experience, what else would you want to add for people who are thinking of joining such a company?
I think high ownership would be really, really important when you join a company which is at an early stage. First of all, your role might get redefined every few weeks or every few months. You need to be okay with that, and you need to show really high ownership. Because in an early stage startup, nobody will be there to micromanage you. Nobody will be there to check on you that, hey, are you doing it all right or not? Are we on time or not? That's something will be expected from you. So high ownership is something I strongly feel that's kind of non-negotiable for anybody who is willing to join an early stage team. Like, they need to behave like a founding member. They need to have that. They need to believe that, okay, this is my company, and they need to behave like one.
What is ownership according to you?
So I think ownership is they making sure the end-to-end process is being taken care of. They don't just work on that, okay, hey, I did so-and-so task. That's not ownership. But what was the outcome of that task? Was that achieved or not? Like if you're working on a project, then you need to own the outcome of that particular project. Not that, okay, I am done with my programming or I'm done with designing. That's not the end goal there. What was the customer impact? What was the outcome? What was the goal you guys defined? Was it achieved or not? And you need to be owning that particular goal. If you want to take high ownership, you need to own that goal, and not just what are the tasks you can do and are you doing those tasks or not.
So basically, this would be accountable for not just finishing a project, but also delivering on the outcomes of the projects. Yes. Maybe, you can measure some of those things with OKRs, KPIs. But if those things are there, then I think what you're saying is every member of such a company should know how their work is measured. Yes. And they should talk in terms of not just the task that they did, but the impact that they drove. Yeah. I can talk about a few examples here. Let's say somebody said, I ran this campaign in marketing last week. Then the expectation would be they ran the campaign, it drew such so and so results. Like, what was the exact impact on the traffic on the website, on the conversion rates across the funnel. All those things are expected from them. They should be held accountable for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's how you define very high ownership culture or high ownership setup, right? That you're just not doing your own task. You're just not figuring things out which you're anyway good at, because that's your job any which way. You're supposed to do that. Even if you are in a company which is at a growth stage or a very big company or an MNC, you will be working on those things. But if you are in a startup, like you mentioned about OKR, but a startup won't even have very well defined OKR. A startup will have one single thing to focus on. And you need to make sure that whatever task you are doing, whatever project you are being assigned, that helps the whole team achieve that one single mission.
Got it. Anything else you would want to add?
I mean, slightly controversial, but this whole work-life balance part, right? I feel that if that's something you are primarily looking at, because a lot of people do ask me that, hey, what kind of work-life balance have you seen in working with startups? It's very hard. Like, if that's one thing you're primarily looking for, or if that's something you want to optimize for, then I would not recommend anybody to join an early stage startup. It's very unlikely that they'll get that work-life balance when you are part of a founding team. Because again, as I mentioned, right, like there are a lot of things changing. Priorities are changing every other day. Timelines are hard. You're racing against time. So I wouldn't recommend, but having said that, I would definitely tell somebody that if you are joining an early stage startup, do keep this in mind that you also have a life outside of the startup. That's something you need to be really proactive about, and you need to make sure that you are also taking care of that part. But again, you would if that, don't optimize for that one single thing. Otherwise, probably early stage startups are not for you.
Okay. So I totally understand where you are coming from. I would also want to add one thing here. I think recently I have seen, and it's a good trend in the ecosystem. I have seen many founders openly talking about the need for team members to take care of themselves. Even though it can be a little hard working in early stage companies because of a lack of proper work-life balance as such. But I think if they get the right kind of support from the team, from the leadership, I think it goes a long way in showing to the team that they care. I also feel many employees, they understand that all of this sacrifice will be worth it and they will be rewarded for their hard work. And this is precisely why some people are, fine with it. And that is what keeps the engine going. It's very important for the ecosystem to have some enterprising people who take a bet on early stage companies, join them and turn the dream into reality.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it would be very hard for us to hire, right?
Very hard. And it continues to be hard, but at least there are some people out there who want to take a leap of faith. So we talked about what people should be prepared for when they consider joining an early stage company. And we talked about several things. Now my question to you would be, why should they join then? What's the meaningful part of joining an early stage company?
That's a good question. A lot of parts actually, but let me give you some pointers. I think the first and most crucial would be, again, slightly arguable, that is working with founders. May or may not be a good idea for a lot of people, but that's really helpful. And if you're ever planning to do your own startup, if that's something is your aspiration somewhere couple of years down the line, then joining an early stage startup, working with the founders, working with how they are trying to solve some of the problem statements, trying to solve the problems with them, that kind of exposure is invaluable. In a way, you learn almost everything what a founder would learn, but without having the risk of, without having the same risk as the founder is carrying, right? You're not worried about funding. You're not worried about that business succeeding or not. Obviously, that's a problem for you, but that's still the founders are supposed to solve that problem. So that's one, that you get to work with founders very, very closely. Second thing is that if this startup works out and if you have enough equity when you join, if you negotiated for enough equity when you join the company, if there is a decent enough exit, then there is a huge, and I would say there is an exponential financial reward at the end. So that's also something, like when you join a startup, you're probably compromising on your salary, you're working extra hours. So you may find that it's not worth it. But I guess if there is, after few years down the line, if there is a decent enough exit, that will be worth it at that time. Another benefit is that, and I've seen that with some of my friends who work at very large MNCs, is if they complain this, that, hey, they worked on a feature for a quarter or two, and that feature never went live. Things like that can happen at startup, or at least at startup as well, but the duration will be very, very small. And every individual will be able to create very, very high and very, very huge impact at an early stage company. So that's something that will also result in very, very faster career growth. So if these are the few things, if you're looking at, then I think early stage startup is something you would want to explore.
What do you mean by fast career growth here? Can you expand a little bit?
If you're early in your career, you're still figuring out, let's say, what do you want to do, and you're interested in a couple of other fields other than your core field. If you are a product designer, but you are also interested in research, if you're also interested in, let's say, something like learning design, then you can, if you are a part of a very large company, it's very unlikely that you will be exposed to multiple different things. But if you're part of a startup, nobody will tell you that, hey, you cannot do this. And that's the ideal setup, by the way. If you want to be exposed to multiple different things, if you want to not just focus on your core work, but also want to contribute on other parts of the company, you'll have the chance to do that. And that will also result in faster career growth, because you will also understand, okay, what exactly do you want to do in your life? What gives you more joy, and you'll be able to focus more on in those areas as well.
What you just said is interesting because it's related to the previous point, one of the previous points that we talked about, which is related to limited resources.
Yep.
So I think because early stage companies have limited resources, it's precisely why some people get more exposure, wider exposure at early stage companies. Like you said, somebody who is a designer and wants to also do user research and also participate in learning experience design, which is very specific to tech companies here. But nobody is going to say no to them because there are not enough people doing it.
Correct. Yeah.
I would want to add one more thing. When I talk to when I talk to candidates, one thing I talk about always is a sense of purpose. So at early stage, I think you are much closer to the purpose because you're directly working with the founders, the founding team. The why of why you started the company is very, very clear. And that keeps you motivated. I can take the example of Airtribe itself. At Airtribe, our vision is to transform the way people learn and network for professional excellence. Many people who are at Airtribe, they went through the experience after college, even during college, when they didn't get enough mentorship, enough guidance to figure out what they should do next.
Yep.
They connected with the problem statement, the purpose at Airtribe really, really well. It somehow translates to a kind of intrinsic motivation. People understand at Airtribe what they are doing is important. What they are doing is meaningful. And part of the reason for that is they empathize with the users really well because they are just like them.
Yeah.
So I think purpose and meaning is something that not a lot of people talk about, but is a very important reason why many people end up joining early stage companies.
Yes.
I have a few friends who actually moved to corporates and they got paid more. They had a much better work-life balance. They could travel the world. All those things were there, but they came back to startups because they lost a sense of meaning and purpose when they moved to corporates. It can be different from people to people, but at least in cases of some of the people I have been friends with, I could see the desire and need for some people to be close to the purpose.
Yep. So if someone is interested in joining a startup, how do you suggest them to go about it?
There are a few ways I have seen working really well. For anything else, it should start with research. So if you are considering joining a startup, I think you should do a very thorough research to understand about who is the team, like what is the team like, who are the founders, what is the culture like. Because early stage companies themselves struggle with hiring talent. They put in a lot of effort to talk about their culture, their values, their team on their AngelList pages or LinkedIn pages.
Yep.
There is a lot that is available on social media. So I think the step one is do research, learn as much as possible about the team, the culture, the mission, the values, everything. I think founders really, really appreciate if they meet a candidate who has done their homework.
Yep.
The second thing would be networking. Networking is something I think is very, very underrated, particularly when it comes to getting a job. When it comes to large companies, it's probably not that helpful. But when it comes to early stage companies, my recommendation is go to events, go to meetups. Many early stage companies and the founders and the teams from there are present in those meetups.
Yeah.
You never know. You come across a founder you probably look up to, or an employee or a founding member from a company that you aspire to join. And if you strike a good conversation there, that will give you another opportunity to learn more about the company, what they are looking for. And if you build a good impression, there is a very good chance you can do a follow-up conversation, like you can meet after the event, after the meetup, and it might lead to a real opportunity. I can give an example here, by the way. There is someone in the team at Airtribe. I met him at a founders meetup. and it happened 2-3 months back. We had a conversation, we liked it, and we stayed in touch on LinkedIn. And one day I sent him I sent him a cool message, and I get a reply, and the next day we are meeting at a cafe. I liked the conversation, and we set the next couple of rounds, and we built conviction quite fast. Now he's part of the team
Yeah.
and doing one of the most important, projects at Airtribe right now. So I think it really works. In fact, I feel I should do more of it. You should do more of it. We should be, the only way they are going to meet us is if we are there. So we should probably attend those meetups a lot more. These are two things I think are very, very helpful. Maybe you can add a few from your experience.
One more thing I would add here is being proactive. I would highly recommend that you don't wait for that perfect role or perfect JD to be out there from the company you're looking to join. Just message the founder, just message the founding team, wherever you feel that, just send them a note with your research. Where do you feel that you can add a lot of value, and just send that out. More often than not, you'll find that the team will figure out a way. If there is a solid fit and if they feel that, okay, you can add a lot of value, you can solve some of the core problem statements, more often than not, they'll accept you, they'll get you in the interview process, and things might work out for you.
That's such a nice way of showing hustle.
Yes.
I think founders are very likely to appreciate, hustle from people. Like if they can figure out a way to message them, or also send a cool email. A well-written cool email can do wonders to somebody's career, and I wish more people knew about it.
Yeah. Moving on, let's talk about the unique relationships people build when they are part of an early stage company.
Based on my experience, early stage companies look more like a family, because everyone is very closely working together. And one more thing I have noticed is, because it's usually an intense environment with tight deadlines, people tend to work very closely together because they all have to get their job done and deliver on the outcomes. So I see that kind of environment leads to strong collaboration, and also hence also bonding. They end up building very strong bonds. This is mostly because of shared experiences. And it's not just the work life. Early stage companies also have one thing in common, that they tend to be 15-20 member teams. It's very easy to go have a dinner or lunch together as a full team, and people get to share their experiences, their emotions, their journey directly with the founders and other team members, most of whom are actually founding team members. So I think that's a little unique. I'm telling you this because both of us have worked at larger companies also, and we have seen things could be a lot more transactional there.
True. Yeah.
You are given a task, you have to complete, and you will be paid. But I don't think people who thrive in startup environment, people who look for such opportunities, they over-index on the just the financial upside. They actually like the experience of working very closely with the team and the founders, and all the emotions that they go through together, the ups and downs, particularly in the first 2 years of 2-3 years of a company. They can be very big, like very high highs, very low lows. That's very, very normal for most early stage companies.
Yeah, correct. I guess all of this is fine. But one thing you don't really get at early stage companies is free food, right? What are the other perks do you miss out on when you join an early stage company?
Now that you mentioned this, I remember when I was in Valley, and I had to visit Google and Facebook offices. The food that I got there.
Oh, yeah. Don't even talk about Google's food.
Yeah, so I kind of thought for a moment if I had made right decisions in life, because the food was that good.
Yep.
All the cuisines from all over the world, it was available to you. It took me a while to understand it's such a beautiful retention strategy. But coming to early stage companies, but like we talked about limited resources, I don't think most founders can afford to give free food. in the first couple of years of the company where they are literally fighting for survival.
Yep.
I wish we had, free food here also.
Let's do it.
I think we are turning 2 years already, so we might just think about it.
Yeah.
The other things I miss about, when I compare to larger companies, a few more things I see missing, which I think people would appreciate. Something like a meditation room, perhaps. This is something I have seen in large companies, and it can be really helpful for people who work in such high stress environment. A few more things. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was saying they also have a gaming room in their company. So there is a PS4 or PS5 setup there, and the people go there, play together, and it also helps with bonding and also to take time off work.
About time we get one.
That's something we can easily do actually. It's very affordable and also doesn't require a lot of space. So we should consider that one good idea. A few more I could talk about would be, I don't think most people who join such companies get a gym membership or something like that.
Yeah. Or even lavish offices, right? Like if that's something you're looking for, then early stage company may not have such lavish offices, sleeping pods inside the office. I don't think you'll get all of those things when you join an early stage company.
That's true. I think the max such companies do is they rent out a very, very good co-working space. Let's say something like WeWork. That's the max people can get. But otherwise, I see most such companies not optimizing too much for the office experience. And I also think the people who work at such companies, they tend to give less importance to how fancy the office is.
Yeah.
Those who really value it, they should really go to a fan company. You will get the best of the world there.
When you were mentioning that the max a company would do, I thought you would say that they would get a win back. But yeah, I mean, yeah, your point is valid that if you're looking for lavish offices and all of those additional perks, early stage companies are definitely not a good fit for you.
Having said that, one thing I have noticed, we talked about constraints, we talked about limited resources. If you are building the right team and you empower the team, they will surprise you. They will help decorate the office space and make it look bigger than it is, better than it actually is. And that happens a lot. That's
Yep.
where the creativity part comes in. I don't think they have to compromise on everything.
Yes, true.
If we empower them, I think they will do wonders.
All right, with that, we come to an end of this episode. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next episode.